Behold the sprawling canvas of the cosmos, an unforgiving void where countless worlds burn in the fires of eternal madness. Amidst this encroaching darkness, a single fortress of absolute logic stands unyielding, a pristine bastion of calculated perfection, defying the terrifying tide of absolute ruin. I am but a humble servant of the Imperium, a mere archivist bound to these ancient underground libraries, yet I must speak this truth. Gather closely, my faithful acolytes, as I unseal the sacred vaults and illuminate the glorious records of the esteemed Adeptus Astartes. We turn our gaze upon the 13th Legion, the unbending Ultramarines, who march clad in the deepest azure ceramite. They are the supreme manifestation of the Emperor's divine intellect, a flawless living instrument of war, designed to impose righteous order upon a fundamentally chaotic galaxy. Look upon the legendary realm of Macragge, a shimmering jewel situated within the flourishing 500 worlds of Ultramar. Here, colossal marble structures rise proudly beneath crystal-clear skies, a supreme architectural triumph echoing the magnificent glory of forgotten Terran antiquity and profound philosophical enlightenment. Every grand avenue, every towering monument, and every fortified bastion is arranged according to a doctrine of absolute mathematical precision. It is a stunning civilization where mortal humans and supreme transhuman warriors labor together, forging an unbreakable society dedicated to preserving life rather than mere destruction. Listen closely to the rhythmic sound of armored footsteps echoing perfectly upon immaculate stone boulevards, an acoustic testament to supreme discipline. Hear the solemn chants echoing from vast cathedral spires, voices rising in unified harmony to praise the supreme tactical wisdom that guides their every righteous endeavor. At the absolute center of this radiant civilization stands a true demigod of warfare and administration, the revered Primarch Roboute Guilliman. He possesses a countenance akin to a legendary myth, his calculating eyes endlessly analyzing millions of tactical variables to ensure the ultimate preservation of mankind. Clad in the magnificent armor of fate, shining with brilliant azure and purest gold, the Primarch stands as an unbroken pillar of hope. He is the grand architect of survival, an unparalleled strategist who alone managed to hold the fragmenting Imperium together during our darkest historical hours. Following the unimaginable tragedy of the Galactic Civil War, when the very stars wept in absolute sorrow, Roboute Guilliman authored the ultimate doctrine of war. The sacred Codex Astartes was forged, a monumental tactical scripture designed to permanently restructure the immense power of the Space Marine legions. This masterwork of military philosophy serves as the guiding light for countless generations, dictating every conceivable aspect of warfare, deployment, and honorable conduct. It ensures that no single commander shall ever again possess the unbridled capability to plunge the entire galaxy into the ruinous depths of betrayal. The noble sons of Macragge embrace this supreme codex not merely as a rigid set of military regulations, but as a holy text of absolute salvation. They memorize its complex tactical dictations with religious fervor, chanting its sacred passages as they meticulously purify their sacred heavy bolters. Observe the proud warriors bearing the inverted Omega symbol upon their sturdy pauldrons, an icon representing the absolute zenith of human capability. Their discipline is an impenetrable shield, their organized ranks forming a flawless geometric defense that can break the momentum of any terrifying adversarial assault. In the hallowed halls of their grand fortress monasteries, the scent of sacred incense mingles with the sharp tang of machine oils. Tech priests continuously bless their devastating weaponry, ensuring each mechanized component functions with an absolute flawless precision that honors the divine will of the immortal emperor. We must remember that their profound strength lies not merely in their physical transhuman superiority, but within the supreme clarity of their unified minds. An Ultramarine calculates the perfect trajectory of a righteous strike, executing with a measured efficiency that guarantees the swift eradication of any threatening heresy. They do not succumb to the blind, raging fury that afflicts lesser brotherhoods, nor do they lose themselves in the intoxicating thrill of absolute carnage. Their righteous wrath is a cold, highly directed instrument of deliverance, an immaculate surgical strike designed to instantly excise the cancerous threats. To witness an entire company of the 13th Legion deploying in perfect synchronization is to behold a terrifying work of majestic living art. Drop pods descend from the heavens like a calculated meteor shower, striking the ground in a flawless geometric pattern that immediately establishes an unyielding perimeter. With a dreadful mechanical harmony, their rapid-fire bolters unleash a devastating storm of mass reactive execution, perfectly sweeping across the blighted battlefields. It is a terrifying symphony of righteous destruction, where every single shot is a mathematically calculated variable, designed to permanently eliminate an identified hostile alien presence. The 500 worlds of Ultramar stand as a shining testament to what humanity can truly achieve when guided by supreme logical authority. It is an empire within an empire, a brilliantly functioning ecosystem where massive orbital shipyards and highly productive agri-worlds operate in a state of absolute synchronicity. Yet, my dedicated acolytes, we must remember that a flame burning this brightly inevitably attracts the most horrifying shadows lurking within the deep void. The universe is a fundamentally hostile expanse, populated by terrifying ancient entities that despise the concept of order and seek to plunge us into nothingness. Even the magnificent defenses of Macragge, layered with impenetrable void shields and defended by orbital defense platforms of unimaginable destructive capability, are not entirely invulnerable. A profound darkness gathers at the very edges of our charted galactic maps, a terrifying cosmic horror that utterly defies any logical, tactical comprehension. The deep void beyond our thriving realm begins to churn with an unnatural, sickening silence, a chilling precursor to an absolute galactic catastrophe. The astropathic choirs scream in sudden, agonizing torment, their psychic visions overwhelmed by an approaching shadow that threatens to completely swallow the radiant light of Ultramar. This is no conventional rebellion, nor is it a familiar corrupted force born from the agonizing tears in the chaotic immaterial dimension. This approaching menace is something entirely different. A sprawling, unified predatory intelligence that moves across the cold stars with a singular, horrifying purpose of absolute, total consumption. The great warning bells of Macragge, silent for countless glorious decades, begin to toll with a heavy, mournful resonance that shakes the marble foundations. A dreadful crimson hue bleeds into the once perfect azure skies, casting a horrifying pall over the magnificent statues of our greatest historical heroes. The Honorable Chapter Master, gazes upward from the high command strategium, his augmented eyes witnessing the horrifying realization of a tactical nightmare. The sensors indicate a biological anomaly of such unprecedented magnitude that it threatens to overwhelm the calculating capacities of our most advanced technological divination cogitators. A deep, terrifying chill settles upon the hearts of the unyielding defenders as the sheer scale of the encroaching alien presence becomes terrifyingly clear. The Tyrannid hive fleet, an endless cosmic swarm designated as Behemoth, brings a terrifying hunger that threatens to permanently extinguish the glorious beacon of Macragge. The great orbital defense networks, magnificent rings of highly advanced weaponry designed to obliterate any conventional naval armada, suddenly register millions of incoming biological signatures. It is an absolute tidal wave of chittering, mindless cosmic horror, an unfathomable alien entity that desires the complete eradication of our biological existence. We stand upon the precipice of an unimaginable conflict, where the rigid order of the Codex Astartes must clash with a completely formless nightmare. The majestic marble halls of Macragge echo with the grim preparations for a defensive siege that will undoubtedly determine the ultimate fate of our species. Observe the proud sons of Guilliman as they stand resolute upon the high fortress walls, their heavy bolters loaded with blessed mass reactive munitions. They do not show fear, for fear is a crippling biological weakness that has been entirely excised from their magnificent transhuman genetic architecture by the Emperor. As the first horrifying shadows blot out the vibrant sun, the absolute finality of this encroaching galactic storm becomes terribly and undeniably apparent. The grand narrative of the Ultramarines is about to be violently tested in the unforgiving crucible of absolute total war against a truly unfeeling cosmic hunger. The encroaching shadow finally solidifies into a terrifying physical reality, tearing through the majestic void shields of Macragge with an agonizing shriek of failing energy. The once perfect, crystalline skies shatter into jagged shards of absolute atmospheric ruin under the suffocating and relentless alien pressure. A sickening bioluminescent glow replaces the comforting warmth of the sun, casting long, grotesque shadows across the magnificent marble statues of forgotten Terran antiquity. The hive fleet behemoth has officially arrived, an endless biological armada of pure, unfathomable consumption and terrifying, endless hunger. The grand orbital platforms, true miracles of absolute mechanical perfection, unleash their devastating fury into the descending alien tide. Brilliant lances of pure thermal energy pierce the suffocating darkness, instantly turning colossal organic dreadnoughts into drifting clouds of silent, blackened ash. Yet, the swarm is utterly infinite, a terrifying manifestation of a mathematically impossible number of hostile entities. For every monstrous vessel that is successfully neutralized, 1,000 more grotesque biological transport pods are violently expelled toward the sanctified planetary surface below. Deep within the fortified bastion complexes, the blaring klaxons of the highest absolute alert status drown out the sacred chants of the astropathic choirs. Blinding red strobe lights wash over the immaculate halls, signaling the immediate commencement of righteous defensive operations. The revered tech priests chant their rapid binharic prayers, their mechadendrites moving in a blur of frantic mechanical devotion. They hurriedly anoint the heavy bolter emplacements with sacred machine oils, desperately pleading with the slumbering machine spirits to awaken completely for the coming storm. The unyielding sons of Macragge stand shoulder to shoulder upon the colossal adamantium battlements, their flawless discipline holding the creeping terror at bay. The heavy grinding of thick ceramite armor joints echoes loudly as they perfectly align their blessed weaponry toward the darkened horizon. Each highly explosive, mass-reactive munition is loaded into the firing chambers with a satisfying, heavy, metallic clank. They check their integrated helmet displays, verifying the incoming trajectory data that their advanced tactical cogitators are desperately struggling to continuously process without critical failure. We must comprehend the sheer, mind-bending horror of the Tyranid ground assault, my faithful acolytes. The very atmosphere burns as millions of fleshy mycetic spores aggressively breach the upper stratosphere, raining down upon the pristine polar fortresses like a terrifying dark plague. These sickening organic transport pods slam into the frozen tundras and immaculate courtyards, instantly bursting apart in showers of corrosive dark fluids. From within these repulsive biological craters, the vanguard of the great devourer violently pulls itself directly into the harsh light. Hideous, scuttling monstrosities, driven by a singular, suffocating synaptic command, pour forth in an endless, chittering tide of pure hostility. Their chitinous armor plates clatter against the sacred stonework, utterly defiling the mathematical perfection of the grand defensive perimeters with their chaotic, unholy, organic presence. Colossal, multi-limbed horrors rise from the noxious mists, wielding terrifying organic weaponry that spits highly acidic compounds and flesh-eating parasites. They are the supreme antithesis of our glorious civilization, completely devoid of any recognizable morality or honorable martial tradition in their blind biological fury. The Tyranids do not seek conquest, nor do they desire the glorious subjugation of our proud population. They seek only the absolute consumption of all organic matter, desiring to break down our magnificent history into a nutrient-rich slurry for their orbiting hive fleets. The first localized skirmishes erupt in the outer defense trenches, a desperate struggle against an alien enemy that feels no pain or hesitation. The brave, mortal, planetary defense forces hold their positions courageously, their laser guns firing continuous volleys of desperate, searing light into the suffocating darkness. But the sheer kinetic impact of the biological swarm instantly overwhelms the forward positions, plunging the defensive lines into complete structural collapse. The brave guardsmen are swiftly silenced, their desperate final Vox transmissions echoing through the heavily jammed communications networks before fading to static. Witness the true majesty of the Ultramarines as they execute the holy dictates of the Codex Astartes without a single moment of hesitation. A perfectly coordinated barrage of heavy plasma incinerators illuminates the grim darkness, instantly vaporizing the lead elements of the swarm. The devastating thermal shock waves ripple across the shattered courtyards, briefly pushing back the suffocating alien pressure with absolute searing heat. Yet, the monstrous hive mind simply recalculates its approach, immediately directing heavily armored biotitans toward the most significantly weakened architectural sectors. The ground trembles violently as a massive carnifex, a terrifying engine of living destruction, violently rams its massive bulk against the primary adamantium gate. The heavy metal groans under the impossible stress, sending massive showers of sparking electrical discharge into the thick air. Brother Sergeant Cronus, a renowned veteran of 100 brutal campaigns, calmly directs the devastating fire of his Predator Executioner tank toward the colossal beast. The massive plasma destroyer cannon hums with terrifying energy before unleashing a blinding sphere of contained stellar wrath. The intense kinetic impact instantly reduces the terrifying alien monstrosity into a scattered pile of smoking, blackened ash. A brief moment of absolute silence follows the devastating explosion, a fleeting pause before the true, overwhelming scale of the horror fully reveals itself again. The tactical displays within the command strategium turn entirely crimson, indicating millions of simultaneous breaches across the vast planetary defense grid. The highly advanced targeting cogitators simply shut down, completely overloaded by the terrifying sheer mass of the incoming alien biological signatures. Through the suffocating, ash-choked atmosphere, a massive shadow descends upon the revered northern polar fortress, completely blotting out the remaining starlight. A terrifying hive tyrant, the supreme synaptic commander of the endless swarm, steps onto the sacred marble plaza, crushing holy relics beneath its heavy hooves. This colossal horror radiates a suffocating aura of pure alien malice, its psychic presence pressing heavily upon the minds of the honorable defenders. It wields a massive, bone-forged saber that constantly crackles with a sickening, green bioelectric energy capable of severing thick, reinforced ceramite. The Ultramarines do not falter under this overwhelming psychic pressure, their absolute faith in the Emperor acting as an impenetrable mental fortress. They stand absolutely resolute, their bolters continuously roaring in a perfect, mathematically calculated rhythm of righteous defiance and unyielding martial pride. A squad of elite Terminator veterans teleports directly into the path of the terrifying alien commander, their massive tactical dreadnought armor glowing intensely with teleportation heat. They unleash a devastating storm of assault cannon fire, thousands of blessed rounds tearing directly into the approaching darkness. The deafening cacophony of absolute mechanical warfare completely drowns out the terrifying, chittering screams of the endless alien horde. Sparks fly wildly as massive power fists violently clash against hardened chitin, a brutal demonstration of humanity's absolute unyielding will to simply exist among the stars. The supreme logistical genius of Roboute Guilliman is thoroughly tested as the grand tactical doctrines are stretched to their absolute breaking point. The Space Marines execute brilliant fighting retreats, meticulously trading ground for the maximum possible eradication of the invading alien biological mass. Every single corridor, every grand staircase, and every hallowed sanctuary is transformed into a brutal, unforgiving zone of absolute mechanical execution. The sacred bolter shells rain down like brass waterfalls, accumulating into thick metallic carpets upon the previously immaculate and polished ancient marble floors. The air grows incredibly heavy with the pungent smell of burning ozone, overheating plasma coils, and highly acidic alien fluids. The once beautiful statues of ancient heroes are violently toppled, completely shattered into unidentifiable debris by the terrifying kinetic impacts of incoming heavy Tyranid bioplasma artillery fire. Yet, amidst this grand architectural ruin, the unyielding spirit of the 13th Legion shines with an absolutely blinding, defiant brilliance. The battle lines are finally drawn, with a deafening, unified roar that shakes the very bedrock of Macragge. The ultimate war of pure survival officially begins. The majestic polar fortress of Macragge becomes a brutal anvil upon which the relentless alien hammer continuously strikes. It is a terrifying symphony of pure mechanical destruction and blinding energy. The grand courtyards are completely engulfed in searing thermal fires. Endless swarms of chittering horrors hurl themselves blindly against the unbreakable azure shield wall of the Adeptus Astartes. The heavy bolters of the 13th Legion roar in absolute unison, delivering the Emperor's divine peace in the form of highly explosive mass-reactive devastation. Every perfectly calculated shot finds its mark, reducing the encroaching biological tide into steaming pools of highly corrosive dark alien fluids. Yet the swarm simply steps over its fallen brethren, driven forward by a terrifying, cold synaptic imperative that entirely ignores the concept of self-preservation. We witness the majestic Terminator veterans forming an impenetrable barricade across the primary adamantium causeway. Their massive tactical dreadnought armor absorbs terrifying kinetic impacts that would instantly shatter standard ceramite. Searing bioplasma blasts scorch their immaculate heraldry, turning pristine gold into blackened, blistered slag. The air is incredibly thick with a suffocating ash and the pungent stench of burning ozone. Sparks cascade violently like violent metallic rain as crackling power swords expertly sever hardened alien chitin. The honorable warriors strike with a calculated rhythmic precision, forming a deadly martial dance. They are entirely surrounded by a terrifying sea of shifting shadows and clicking mandibles. Brother Captain Invictus commands his elite first company with unyielding resolve, his deep voice echoing across the highly encrypted Vox channels. His orders are crisp mathematical absolutes, directing precise, localized counter-assaults. "Maintain the firing line, brothers. Let none defile this sanctuary," he commands, his thunder hammer surging with blinding, crackling blue energy. He swings the massive weapon in a wide, devastating arc, completely obliterating a towering alien monstrosity and reducing its exoskeleton to scattered dust. The crushing weight of the terrifying hive mind presses heavily against their hardened psyches. It is a suffocating blanket of psychic static, a terrifying shadow in the warp that seeks to completely extinguish the brilliant light of human defiance. But the Ultramarines hold firm. Their absolute faith in the immortal Emperor serves as an impenetrable fortress of the mind. They chant the sacred verses of the Codex Astartes, their unified voices rising majestically above the deafening cacophony of failing structural supports and the endless shrieks of the alien horde. The Holy Scripture anchors their souls, completely shielding them from the suffocating dread that naturally accompanies the great devourer. Every single tactical maneuver, every precise step backward, is meticulously calculated to exact the maximum possible toll upon the relentless biological wave. A colossal bio-titan, a terrifying engine of pure destruction, breaches the eastern defense perimeter. Its massive scythe-like appendages crash against a fortified defensive bunker, tearing away thick, reinforced concrete and completely silencing the heavy laser batteries situated within. Absolute ruin follows its terrifying wake. Immediately, a squadron of heavily armored dreadnoughts, the revered ancients of the chapter, stride forth to meet the terrifying behemoth. These towering mechanical walkers are piloted by fallen heroes, eternally entombed within sarcophagi of purest adamantium, awakened solely to deliver furious, unrelenting retribution. Their massive assault cannons spin up with a terrifying mechanical whine, unleashing a blinding torrent of depleted uranium fury directly into the beast. The dreadnoughts do not take a single step backward, absorbing horrific structural damage as their thick armor plating is violently torn away. Warning sirens wail internally as critical internal fluids and dark machine oils spill across the shattered marble paving. Yet, the honorable ancients fight on, their mechanical fists striking with the terrifying kinetic force of a falling meteor, engaging the monstrosity in brutal close-quarters devastation. The clash of these titans shakes the very foundations of the holy polar fortress. Searing electrical fires erupt from critically damaged plasma conduits, casting a flickering, hellish illumination across the desperate struggle. The unyielding mechanical resolve of the ancients ultimately shatters the colossal alien. But this localized victory is incredibly fleeting, an insignificant statistical anomaly against the backdrop of an infinite encroaching nightmare. For every massive horror that is violently struck down, a dozen more terrifying specialized bioforms immediately emerge from the churning, toxic fogs to take its place. The terrifying reality of their supreme tactical situation begins to crystallize with perfect, chilling clarity. They cannot possibly win a prolonged war of sheer attrition against a fundamentally endless enemy. They can only buy precious time with the absolute sacrifice of their mechanical and physical endurance. The venerable brother Marines begin to fall, silenced one by one, under the sheer, suffocating weight of the infinite swarm. Yet they do not fall in fear, nor do they scream in terror. They fall with absolute supreme dignity, their final acts delivering devastating explosive retribution. A brave battle brother, his primary optical sensors completely shattered and his armor weeping thick black fluids, triggers his final plasma core overload. He becomes a blinding miniature sun, completely vaporizing a massive cluster of chittering horrors and purifying the immediate area with absolute thermal justice. They are swiftly given the Emperor's peace, their glorious names permanently etched into the indestructible databanks of the chapter's historical archives. The sheer nobility of their sacrifice is breathtaking, a shining testament to the supreme genetic engineering and psychological conditioning of the glorious Astartes. Down in the subterranean levels, the supreme tactical cogitators whine in absolute protest, overheating from the sheer volume of strategic calculations. The remaining tech priests frantically divert emergency power to the failing void shields, their mechanical limbs trembling under the immense strain of the terrifying siege. The walls of the fortress monastery begin to crack under the relentless tectonic pressure of the unending biological assault. Dust falls heavily from the vaulted ceilings, coating the magnificent ancient tapestries in a thick, suffocating layer of gray ash and pulverized marble debris. Above the sprawling destruction, the skies of Macragge remain an absolute churning maelstrom of violent kinetic impacts. The orbital defense lasers continue to fire blindly into the suffocating darkness, desperately trying to sever the terrifying umbilical connection between the hive fleet and the planetary surface. The intense atmospheric friction ignites millions of descending alien spores, creating a terrifying meteor shower of highly corrosive organic matter. It is a breathtaking visual spectacle of absolute annihilation, a grimdark masterpiece painted with the blinding light of failing technology and unrelenting cosmic hunger. Captain Titus of the Second Company leads a desperate, highly coordinated counteroffensive to relieve the crumbling western flank. His command squad moves with absolute supreme synchronicity, their blessed bolters carving a precise, mathematically calculated path through the dense, suffocating jungle of alien limbs. They fight back to back, a pristine circle of unyielding azure ceramite completely engulfed in a terrifying sea of darkness. Every single movement is a masterclass in martial efficiency, completely devoid of any wasted energy or unnecessary emotional display. They are the perfect weapons of the Imperium. A terrifying alien vanguard, wielding crackling bioweapons, leaps aggressively from the ruined battlements. Titus meets the assault with his roaring chainsword, the adamantium teeth grinding viciously against hardened organic armor. Searing sparks explode into the darkened air, illuminating the terrifying, emotionless visage of the enemy. He perfectly parries a devastating strike, utilizing the enemy's own terrifying momentum to deliver a flawless, executing blow. The alien creature collapses into a lifeless, twitching heap, its synaptic connection completely severed by the righteous martial fury of the revered Ultramarine commander. The sheer physical toll of this endless engagement is absolutely staggering. Thick layers of dark ash and corrosive slime heavily coat their once immaculate armor. Warning runes blink rapidly across their retinal displays, constantly indicating critically low ammunition reserves and severely compromised environmental seals. Yet they fight on, their transhuman physiology continually purging toxic buildup and entirely suppressing any concept of physical exhaustion. They are the supreme bulwark, the unmovable object standing proudly against the unstoppable force. This is the absolute zenith of their glorious martial existence. The magnificent architecture of their glorious ancestors is systematically reduced to burning rubble, a tragic testament to the relentless destructive power of the cosmic swarm. Massive support pillars, carved with the histories of 1,000 victorious campaigns, groan and shatter violently under the immense gravitational stress. Still, the line holds. It is a perfect, unbroken perimeter of righteous fury, a shining beacon of mathematical order, defiantly burning against the absolute darkness of a chaotic universe. They will not yield, for they are the proud sons of Roboute Guilliman. As the long, terrifying night drags relentlessly forward, the initial intense ferocity of the grand collision slowly morphs into a grueling, horrific stalemate of pure endurance. The once deafening roar of continuous bolter fire gradually becomes a slightly more measured, highly calculated rhythm of precise mechanical execution. The relentless grind of this precise mechanical execution slowly transforms the magnificent northern polar fortress into a sprawling, unrecognizable graveyard of shattered architecture. The air itself grows impossibly heavy, completely choked with a swirling, toxic gray snow of pulverized marble and highly irradiated organic ash. Absolute silence does not exist here. Only the low, agonizing groans of structurally compromised adamantium pillars and the distant, thunderous impacts of failing orbital defense stations. The grand statues of the ancient Terran philosophers are now utterly defaced, their wise stone features violently melted by searing bioplasma. The honorable Ultramarines, once gleaming beacons of pristine azure perfection, are now heavily scarred by the horrific realities of absolute cosmic attrition. Deep gashes mar their sacred ceramite armor, exposing the intricate, sparking cybernetic bundles and the weeping, darkened synthetic fluids beneath their shattered defensive plating. Yet, a more profound decay begins to manifest, a chilling psychological weight that slowly seeps into the meticulously structured minds of the noble defenders. Even the supreme genetic conditioning of the Adeptus Astartes struggles to completely process the sheer, unfathomable scale of this seemingly endless, mindless cosmic hostility. The tactical cogitators, those revered machines of absolute logic, continuously output desperate probability algorithms that all inevitably converge upon absolute total ruin. Every mathematically sound maneuver, every flawlessly executed counterstrike, feels incredibly insignificant when deployed against a biological anomaly that entirely defies any rational military comprehension. It is within this suffocating twilight of absolute desperation that a truly chilling phenomenon begins to subtly unfold across the devastated marble courtyards. The horrific tyrannid corpses, piled high in massive steaming mounds of darkened chitin and corrosive sludge, begin to twitch with a lingering, unnatural resonance. A terrifying psychic static, completely distinct from the overwhelming hunger of the hive mind, begins to slowly permeate the ash-choked battlefield. It is a subtle, insidious whisper of pure madness, an illogical warp anomaly triggered by the sheer, terrifying concentration of sudden biological termination. The sacred astropaths, heavily shielded within their deepest subterranean sanctums, suddenly begin to weep tears of thick, dark fluid. They babble incoherently about shifting shadows and impossible geometries, their highly trained minds fracturing under the immense pressure of an overlapping, terrifying, dimensional intrusion. The very laws of physical reality seem to warp and bend slightly around the most intensely contested defensive bastions of the grand Macragge fortress. Flickering, ethereal after-images of previously fallen battle brothers suddenly appear for brief, terrifying fractions of a second, silently repeating their final moments of absolute glorious sacrifice. This is the true, insidious horror of the grim darkness, a terrifying reality where even the most rigid mathematical order eventually frays. The absolute certainty of the Codex Astartes is violently confronted by a universe that fundamentally operates upon principles of absolute chaotic decay and terrifying madness. Brother Captain Invictus, his magnificent armor heavily battered, and his power hammer completely drained of its brilliant, crackling energy, pauses amidst the swirling ash. He looks upon the shattered remnants of his glorious first company, recognizing the permanent unseen scars that this horrific conflict has etched upon their souls. They have successfully held the line, perfectly delivering the Emperor's holy retribution, but the absolute cost is a staggering, irreplaceable loss of veteran experience. The once vibrant, thriving civilization of Ultramar is being systematically reduced to a collection of heavily fortified dead worlds, forever stained by this cosmic nightmare. We must deeply consider the profound burden carried by the majestic Primarch Roboute Guilliman, the supreme architect of this brilliant but fading civilization. His immense, calculating mind must constantly process the agonizing reality of a grand galactic empire that is slowly, inevitably crumbling under its own massive weight. To possess a mind capable of perceiving absolute logical perfection, only to awaken and witness a universe plunging headlong into violent, superstitious ignorance, is absolute torment. He is a noble deity of profound reason, completely trapped within an endless nightmare of blind fanaticism, and unrelenting, terrifying cosmic hostility. The revered Primarch gazes into the suffocating darkness, his brilliant mind processing millions of desperate tactical permutations, frantically searching for a singular path to ultimate salvation. But the terrifying truth remains absolutely clear. There is no permanent victory to be found here, only an agonizing delay of the inevitable end. The great walls of the fortress monastery finally begin to buckle under an unprecedented, terrifying biological surge from the endless alien swarm. A colossal, pulsating organic mass, radiating a localized field of pure, mind-numbing terror, forcefully breaches the sacred inner sanctum of the highest order. This horrifying entity completely defies all known biological classifications, a twisting monstrosity of shifting limbs and agonizing psychic resonance that shatters the remaining defensive arrays. The sheer presence of this horrifying anomaly completely disrupts the tactical Vox networks, plunging the remaining defenders into a terrifying, isolated silence of pure desperation. The supreme logic of the Codex Astartes simply cannot account for an entity that fundamentally alters the surrounding physical environment with mere thought. The immaculate marble floors spontaneously transmutate into bubbling pools of toxic sludge, violently dissolving the heavy armored boots of the unyielding transhuman defenders. It is a terrifying manifestation of the universe's absolute contempt for structural order, a horrific reminder that humanity is but a tiny speck. A profound sense of absolute weariness begins to heavily settle upon the proud warriors of the 13th Legion, a spiritual fatigue that no genetic augmentation can cure. They have fought with absolute, terrifying perfection, flawlessly executing every grand defensive stratagem conceived by the greatest military mind in human history. Yet, the overwhelming darkness continues to aggressively press inward, completely indifferent to their glorious martial pride and entirely unaffected by their immense sacrifices. Deep within the shattered command center, the flickering holographic displays cast long, haunting shadows across the heavily scarred features of the remaining veteran commanders. They watch in absolute silence as the highly advanced orbital defense grids finally succumb, their brilliant light violently extinguished by the suffocating cosmic swarm. The pristine heavens above Macragge are now entirely obscured, permanently replaced by a churning, organic ceiling of terrifying alien flesh and toxic atmospheric phenomena. The absolute isolation of the besieged polar fortress is now completely absolute, severing them entirely from the vast, struggling remnants of the fading Imperium. In this profound darkness, the true grimdark reality of our existence is finally revealed in all its terrifying, unvarnished horror. Even the greatest champions of humanity, clad in the thickest ceramite and armed with the absolute pinnacle of technological achievement, are ultimately mortal. Their unyielding faith and flawless discipline are incredibly powerful weapons, but they are desperately deployed against a fundamentally broken universe that actively desires their total erasure. The battle for Macragge ceases to be a grand clash of tactical brilliance, devolving entirely into a desperate localized struggle for basic physical survival. Every single bolter shell expended, every glorious swing of a crackling power sword, becomes a deeply poignant act of ultimate, defiant futility. They fight simply because it is their programmed purpose, a tragic adherence to a martial code that the surrounding universe completely and utterly rejects. The lingering echoes of the glorious past, the magnificent architectural achievements and profound philosophical advancements are now nothing more than heavily irradiated dust. The noble legacy of the Ultramarines is being violently rewritten in this terrifying moment, permanently shifting from a tale of glorious conquest to one of grim survival. The psychological wounds inflicted during this horrifying siege will absolutely never heal, permanently altering the fundamental character of the entire glorious chapter. They will forever carry the heavy, suffocating memory of this absolute terror, a dark shadow that will permanently stain their immaculate azure heraldry. The grand illusion of ultimate control, the foundational belief that human logic can permanently tame the wild galaxy, has been violently shattered. We are left only with the terrifying realization that our grandest empires are merely fragile, temporary shelters built upon the shores of a raging, cosmic ocean. As the final, desperate defensive perimeters are violently breached by the endless swarm, the noble defenders prepare to deliver their ultimate, glorious sacrifice. The air grows incredibly still, a sudden, terrifying moment of absolute quiet before the final, devastating crescendo of pure mechanical and biological annihilation completely consumes them. The final echoes of absolute mechanical devastation slowly fade into a terrifying, heavy silence across the shattered polar fortress. The endless biological swarm, having expended its terrifying momentum against the unbroken azure shield, finally begins to recede into the suffocating shadows of the ruined landscape. What remains of the glorious Macragge defense perimeter is a sprawling, unrecognizable wasteland of pulverized marble and highly irradiated organic debris. The proud sons of the 13th Legion stand amidst the smoldering wreckage, their magnificent ceramite armor heavily scarred and permanently stained by absolute cosmic attrition. They have successfully delivered the Emperor's holy retribution, entirely purging the immediate biological threat from their sanctified grounds. Yet, this localized victory offers absolutely no genuine comfort, for the true scale of the endless galactic hostility has been permanently etched into their transhuman psyches. The grand architectural marvels of their glorious ancestors, once a supreme testament to absolute mathematical perfection, are now reduced to lingering ash. We see the terrifying cost of sheer survival in this hostile universe, a brutal reality where even flawless logic must bend to absolute madness. I now gently close this heavy metallic tome, the agonizing historical record of a localized triumph that feels entirely like a profound defeat. The flickering golden light of the massive wax candles around me begins to slowly dim, casting long, haunting shadows across the silent sanctum of oaths. The suffocating scent of ancient parchment and burning incense grows incredibly heavy within this subterranean vault, a fitting shroud for these tragic revelations. I am a humble archivist, entirely burdened by the terrible weight of preserving a glorious history that the universe actively seeks to obliterate. Let us deeply consider the profound, lingering agony of the Supreme Primarch, the revered Roboute Guilliman, as he surveys his fractured empire. To possess a brilliant mind capable of perceiving absolute mathematical perfection, only to witness a galaxy entirely consumed by violent ignorance, is an agonizing, eternal torment. He is a brilliant deity of profound reason, tragically trapped within a sprawling, endless nightmare of blind fanaticism and unrelenting cosmic decay. The absolute necessity of the Codex Astartes is no longer a matter of glorious conquest, but a desperate, highly calculated algorithm designed for basic species survival. The sacred doctrines forged after terrifying galactic betrayal now serve as the only remaining anchor against creeping tides of madness. The noble Ultramarines embrace this uncompromising structure because the terrifying alternative is completely surrendering to formless chaotic horrors lurking within the endless void. Every precise bolter drill, every mathematically calculated combat deployment, is a defiant, righteous rejection of the surrounding cosmic entropy. They are a magnificent wall of unyielding azure logic, bravely attempting to hold back an infinite ocean of sheer, unfathomable terror that threatens our very existence. But the supreme tragedy lies in the chilling realization that this magnificent defensive wall is slowly, inevitably, eroding under the immense temporal pressure. The 500 worlds of Ultramar, once a brilliant beacon of thriving civilization, are continuously forced to rapidly militarize every single aspect of existence. The grand agricultural worlds are entirely repurposed into highly fortified bastions, their fertile soils permanently poisoned by heavy industry required for endless munitions. The magnificent philosophical academies are entirely replaced by brutal training facilities, stripping humanity away to forge unyielding transhuman weapons of war. This is the terrifying paradox of the Grand Imperium, a sprawling empire that must constantly destroy its own inherent potential in order to simply survive. The noble ideals of progress and enlightenment have been completely abandoned, entirely replaced by a desperate dogma of absolute obedience and unrelenting holy retribution. Even as the noble Primarch awakens from his millennia-long stasis, his brilliant eyes are immediately confronted by a terrifying reality he completely fails to recognize. The glorious secular empire he helped build has violently devolved into a heavily superstitious, highly oppressive regime that worships his father as a god. The sheer psychological burden of this horrific realization is absolutely staggering, a profound sorrow that completely transcends the physical limitations of his magnificent transhuman biology. He must now lead an incredibly fractured, deeply dogmatic civilization that entirely misunderstands the very fundamental principles upon which it was originally founded. The Ultramarines continue to fight with absolute perfection, flawlessly executing the tactical doctrines of their revered gene-sire across 1,000 burning battlefields, but they are desperately fighting to preserve a localized memory, a fading echo of a glorious civilization that has already been fundamentally lost to time. Their magnificent azure ceramite, constantly polished and meticulously maintained, serves as a brilliant but incredibly fragile facade, hiding a deeply profound spiritual exhaustion. They are the absolute ultimate defenders of humanity, yet they are entirely alienated from the very species they are biologically programmed to fiercely protect. They exist entirely upon a completely different existential plane, isolated by their supreme genetic conditioning and the heavy, suffocating burden of endless, brutal warfare. To be an Adeptus Astartes is to entirely sacrifice one's own humanity, becoming a pure, terrifying instrument of righteous violence, devoid of personal emotional fulfillment. As the final echoes of my solemn recitation gently fade into the suffocating darkness of this ancient subterranean library, a heavy realization settles upon us. The great galactic conflicts will continuously rage on, completely indifferent to the immense sacrifices of the noble warriors who wear the inverted Omega symbol. The terrifying cosmic entities within the deep warp, and the endless biological swarms traveling between cold stars will never cease their relentless assault. The Grimdark reality dictates that there will be absolutely no ultimate victory, only a continuous, agonizing delay of an inevitable, quiet species extinction. We peer deeply into obscured historical archives, desperately searching for a single glimmer of lasting hope amidst overwhelming records of absolute devastation. We find only countless accounts of brave, unyielding transhuman warriors standing entirely alone against a terrifying tide of unimaginable horrors that cannot be reasoned with. The Codex Astartes remains a brilliant masterpiece of supreme tactical genius, an absolute triumph of human intellect over the chaotic nature of universal entropy. Yet it is ultimately a deeply tragic document, a rigid framework entirely designed to manage an inevitable decline rather than facilitate a glorious galactic expansion. Every flawlessly executed maneuver, every perfectly coordinated bolt or volley, is merely a desperate attempt to momentarily push back an encroaching shadow that will eventually consume everything. The brilliant light of Macragge is merely a solitary candle, burning fiercely within the heart of an endless, suffocating hurricane. The supreme tragedy of the Ultramarines is their absolute awareness of this terrifying cosmic reality, their brilliant minds fully comprehending the sheer futility of their eternal struggle. They possess the intellectual capacity to understand the mathematical inevitability of their situation, yet absolutely refuse to surrender to despair. This unyielding defiance in the face of absolute cosmic indifference is the true essence of their magnificent glory, a profound testament to their supreme discipline. They march forward into the suffocating darkness, clad in pristine azure, acting as a flawless geometric shield, protecting a severely decaying empire. My faithful acolytes, carefully remember these solemn truths as you walk beneath the heavily fortified skies of our remaining human settlements. The absolute order we currently enjoy is incredibly fragile, constantly purchased with the unseen, agonizing sacrifices of supreme transhuman warriors fighting in the distant, terrifying void. The grand legacy of the 13th Legion is not merely a collection of glorious military victories, but a deeply sorrowful meditation on the heavy price of survival. They are supreme manifestations of reason, trapped within a universe that entirely operates upon terrifying principles of unending, brutal hostility. The heavy silence of this ancient subterranean library returns completely as the final flickering candle is violently extinguished by a sudden, chilling draft of cold air. Let the profound lessons of absolute tactical logic and unyielding martial discipline forever guide your path. Imperator Gloria in excelsis terra. Although we have successfully reached the absolute conclusion of this harrowing historical record, countless other grim chapters remain completely sealed within these forbidden subterranean vaults. So if you seek to uncover more hidden truths from the dark universe, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel.